right, folks, we are back here on WLTH 1370 AM. It is 7:44 in the PM here on July the 18th, 2025. The future is here. The future is now. And before I get out of here, because it's almost time for me to get out of here before Dr. Williams comes in with the 2x4 and starts regulating, I just want to do this last story about the city of Baltimore, which is reporting historic, you hear me, historic drop in crime, homicide rates this April, hitting the all-time low. They recorded the lowest number of monthly homicides in history this April, according to Mayor Brandon Scott. The city reported just 5 homicide cases in April 2025. In April last year, they reported 13 homicides. That's a 61.5% drop in 1 year. The reason I think this is a very important story is because we talk about crime in this country as something that can't be helped, other than just locking everybody up. Again, this is the sort of post-Nixon, post-Reagan idea that tough on crime, that just being tough on crime and locking everybody up is the way that you deal with violent crime. And time again, we have study after study after study after study that shows us just locking people up in mass does not do anything. If it did, America would be the safest country in the world. We have 5% of the world's population. 5%. And a quarter of the world's prison population, almost. So why, in spite of the fact that America locks up more people than anybody, are we not a safe country? And what can we learn from falling crime rates in places like Baltimore? Well, the historic drop has come as the city continues to see dramatic decreases in violent crime across the board. According to the mayor, homicides are down 31% and non-fatal shootings are down 27%. Since 2020, homicides have dropped 40% and non-fatal shootings have declined by 43%. Over the year, crime rates have continued to drop all across all categories, including robberies, carjackings, and arson. Now, according to the Washington Post, violent crime spiked in the 1970s in Baltimore, just like it did across the country. And in 1992, the city broke its homicide record with a reported 333 killings. This is something we see across the board. And again, when we talk about violent crime, we talk about it as if it's just a city-by-city thing. No, violent crime exists on a continuum. Virtually every city, if you look at this country, you will see most cities, the major cities, saw their crime increase massively in the late 60s and early 70s and reached their absolute peak in the early 90s. You see that in virtually everywhere. You see that in New York, LA, Chicago, Baltimore. Very similar here in Gary. We reached our peak in the mid-90s. And then we saw a decline in crime that starts in the mid-90s and sort of worked its way down. And so people are asking, what is going on? What is going on? What exactly is Baltimore doing that maybe we can learn from here in Gary or East Chicago or anywhere else? Well, according to their mayor, he unveiled a summer youth engagement strategy. The initiative activated a non-traditional curfew and a lineup of programs for young people in safe environments during the summer. So he invested in his young people. He invested in his young people. The strategy helped reduce youth violence and victimization over the past 2 summers. I'm sure it had a lot to do with it, but also crime is, like I said, exists on a continuum, and it sort of goes up and down across the board. But we see time and time again that when you invest in your people, good things happen. And so he invested in a summer youth engagement strategy. Also, we see now there are studies that show that Medicaid is actually something that helps bring down crime as well. In 2019, the FBI reported that there were 8 million crimes a year, which cost the U.S. citizens $3 trillion. But now a paper called Losing Medicaid and Crime has revealed they studied the 2005 Medicaid disenrollment that occurred in Tennessee, in which 190,000 people who are non-elderly, non-disabled enrollees without dependents lost their health insurance. Now, this population had been eligible for Medicaid in Tennessee since the early 90s and had generous coverage, which included preventative care, prescription coverage, and access to mental health care. In addition to the disenrollment data, the authors looked at all reported violent and nonviolent crimes in Tennessee, and they found a sharp increase in crime rates for at least 2 years after the 2005 disenrollment. Prior to the Medicaid disenrollment, the median Tennessee county had 25.8% of the population enrolled in Medicaid. Following Medicaid disenrollment, a Tennessee county with a median amount of exposure to disenrollment had 1,030 fewer Medicaid enrollees and an additional 270 crimes. So what we see time and time again is that America is the only country, the only wealthy country without universal health care. And what we see time and time again is that America is the most violent of all of the wealthy nations in the world. When we look at the countries with the highest living standards, Denmark, Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Netherlands, Iceland, Luxembourg, Australia, and even Canada, which is our neighbor, they all have one thing in common. They have universal health care. So again, when we talk about crime, there is no way to talk about crime in this country without talking about why we don't invest in our citizens here in this country. And again, I keep telling y'all, we need to stop voting for these people if they are not talking about this stuff. This is why I vote third party. This is why I don't support the Democrats or the Republicans. Because none of them are talking about truly investing in our people. When is the last time, since Bernie Sanders in 2016, when is the last time the Democrats put out a candidate that was pro-universal health care? And even then, again, the Democrats made sure Bernie couldn't get the nomination, so Hillary didn't support it. So, I mean, Bernie's the last major candidate. He didn't make it through. I can't remember the last time we had maybe early 90s. Did the Clintons support universal health care when they got the nomination in the early 90s? I know Hillary did back then. She stopped supporting it once she started getting insurance money from the health insurance companies as a senator. But in the early 90s, I know she did. I'm not sure about her husband, but I think maybe Roosevelt might be the last Democrat or just the last politician we had that supported universal health care as a part of their platform, in spite of the fact that the entirety of the Western world has it, except for us. And now we see there is a correlation between healthcare and crime, healthcare and crime, investing in citizens and crime. There's no way to look at what we see here in Gary and East Chicago and South Side of Chicago for y'all listening across the border without talking about what happens when you don't invest in your communities. And that means things like healthcare. And so what Baltimore has done and what other countries are doing, they're not miracles. They're very easily replicatable here in the city of Gary, anywhere else. Invest in your young people. Give them something to do so that they're not walking around the streets aimless. And fight for health care for your people. It really is that simple, folks. It really is that simple. Maybe one day we'll actually get it in this country, like every other country seemingly has.